Sup, freaks? This episode was brought to you by our good friends at Crowd Health. Crowd Health is here to help you reimagine how you pay your healthcare costs, how you take care of your healthcare. Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's actually trying to get more and more people to walk away from the health insurance industry because it's an opaque black box where you throw money in. You don't really know what's going on with it. You don't know how your healthcare costs are being negotiated on your behalf by the health insurance companies. You really don't know if you're being taken care of or not. Crowd Health is here to fix that. What you do when you join Crowd Health is you join a community of people who are taking care of themselves and who really want to become sovereign with their healthcare. What you do is you become a member and you pay a monthly fee. That fee goes to a dedicated health account, a bank account that you control, that you have visibility into, that you can always take with you at the end of the day if you decide to move away from Crowd Health. You pay that monthly subscription fee. And then if you ever have a health event, you bring your healthcare bill to the Crowd Health team. They go to the doctor, negotiate your health expense down to a lower price because they actually work on your behalf as opposed to the insurance companies. And then you pay the first $500 of your healthcare cost, and then it goes out to the Crowd Health community, and your bill is crowdsourced. To date, they've had 100% of their healthcare bills paid, and it's a beautiful thing. They're also adding a Bitcoin component where a portion of your monthly subscription fee will get put into Bitcoin. So you have your fiat dollars alongside your Bitcoin account. Again, you have access to both at the end of the day if you ever want to walk away from it. But again, it helps you lower your healthcare costs because they're there to negotiate on your behalf. It's a much more personal experience instead of calling a 1-800 number. When you become a Crowd Health member, you have a dedicated health advocate who is the same person throughout your time with Crowd Health, who's going to walk you through everything you need to do and make sure that you're getting the best care that you can get that you can possibly get. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/TFTC. The first 1,000 members of the Bitcoin community are going to get, using the code TFTC, are going to get $99 a month for the first 6 months of their healthcare, of their Crowd Health cost. So go check this out. Me and my family, we use Crowd Health. We've decided to opt out of the traditional health insurance industry. Again, it's very opaque. Feel like it doesn't really take care of us. So come join us in the Crowd Health community. Use the code TFTC.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
What was it like starting a podcast in 2009? Or taking over a podcast?
Taking over a podcast. Even back then, you had those snowball mics or whatever. I don't know. Podcasts always kind of felt like a big deal to me because I was listening to them so much. So like, I know podcasts are a really big deal now, but in 2009, it felt like a big deal to be on a podcast. Like it almost exactly the same to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think I started listening to podcasts until like 2011. When Rogan started blowing up. But that wasn't even really podcasting. I was like watching via YouTube.
I heard about, there's a magazine called Mac Addict that my parents got me for Christmas. So I'd get these magazines. I'm very old, and they'd be about, here's cool things you can do with your Mac. And I think this is pre-iPod. It's like this kind of idea of pirate radio, right? So you have a multimedia computer that can play audio files, and you have a web browser. You could record an audio file, put that up, and other people could listen to it. So I did a podcast when I was like 16. It was about like anime and JRPGs. Good luck finding that.
What was the podcasting scene like? Was it small?
I don't think there was even RSS for it. It was just
via Apple.
But 2009, you saying? Or?
Yeah.
I mean, I felt it was like really mature. It was mostly Apple. The Apple podcast was kind of the only directory. The From a personal perspective, the podcasting that I did at Engadget was really valuable because a bunch of us, me, Josh, and Eli, were on this podcast. We built a really nice audience for ourselves. And then when we decided to leave Engadget and start our own publication, which was eventually called The Verge, we basically took the audience with us because they followed us to like an interim podcast called This Is My Next. And when we launched The Verge, that audience came along as well. And so, instead of just like disappearing from Engadget, nobody knows where we are, and then pop up, a year later with a website, like that would have been a really hard transition. But the podcast was able to keep this really loyal audience, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, it is the beauty of podcasting. It's all about the freaks out there listening.
That's right.
I should be asking you tips. I mean, this has turned into a media company. What was it like starting The Verge?
I mean, that was a pretty fun time. There was a lot of ideas, and it was tough because not a lot of the ideas, they wouldn't all come true. Like I remember kind of like I got in this kind of blank piece of paper mode, and then I feel like there's something about the constraints of the market or what everybody else is doing that kind of collapsed that possibility space back into something that was not so different. The Verge, the really exciting thing about The Verge was this idea that we're the magazines now. That you don't have to be on a physical newsstand to do like premium, like magazine style articles. Like we're just a bunch of little bloggers, but we can do premium work. But ultimately that is actually really hard to fund. And then The Verge became enamored with like Facebook clicks and those short form social videos. Listicle. Yeah. So it's just like that the where the revenue is, where the traffic is, kind of ultimately starts to like shape how the media company actually operates. So like it might be fun to come up with really cool ideas how to change everything, but that's just not, in that time, that's not really how it worked out. It felt like.
No, you have to feed the people's attention spans. That's why we've like started branching into that too. I'm getting not forced to, but told like, hey, if you want to grow this thing, you need like top of the funnel, like 1 minute clips. I've never done that.
Yeah, I felt this real tension with those short media clips at The Verge because I felt like if one of our loyal people, those people who followed us from Engadget, the really true diehards, if one of those saw one of these little clips, I think they'd feel condescended to. And
Odell was one of these people, wasn't he?
The devil?
Odell. Matt.
Yes, the devil.
The devil. Yeah, that's our nickname for him behind the scenes.
Yeah, Odell was a Verge fan. That's how I started listening to TFTC right around when Rabbit Hole Recap started. And you were like part of my like Bitcoin journey of like you would say, "What's up, freaks?" And I was like, okay, I thought of myself as an outside observer. Like, let me look at this ecosystem and see what I like about it. And then I liked what you guys had to offer. But then I started hearing Matt talk about he would do like disclosure, which is like it's a thing that we'd always do in the Vergecast because there's all these interconnected media companies, and my coworker's wife works for Facebook, and so we're talking about Facebook, and then we have to disclose and stuff like that. So Matt would kind of like, I felt like he was giving me little head nods to the Vergecast. So when I reached out to him, I was like, "Do you listen to the Vergecast?"
Hell yeah, I do. I mean, you've got a blue check.
I do.
That was probably big for Matt when you reached out. It was like, you listen to Verge?
Finally, some recognition from the media elite.
What drove you to listen to RHR and TFTC? Why Bitcoin at that time? 2018.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah, late 17, 2018. I know. I remember. I'm pretty bad with the dates and the timeline stuff, but I know. I'd heard of Bitcoin a few times. I was pretty familiar with it because I was in the tech scene, and I looked into it enough to decide like, oh yeah, seems like a working system. That's cool. we don't need another money because we already have a money. But I guess if you needed to have another money, that would be great. So I didn't understand the economic side of what was so failed about the money, and then this fork wars happened, and I'm like hearing like Roger Ver like crying on a podcast, and like I'm like listening to these debates, and like I don't know, I have no idea who is the real Bitcoin, you know. So you know that was kind of like a little like unsettling, or just like I don't know enough about this to get involved. But I've for a longer time than I've been interested in Bitcoin, been really interested in decentralization. I think that like top down control is really inefficient, and so I've been just kind of learning about that for a while. And so I was much more interested in Ethereum, this idea of, because like I said, I don't need a new money, but I do want to find a way to like decentralize these applications.
Distributed compute.
Yeah, it sounds great. And the nice thing about tuning in to media like yours, reading the Bitcoin Standard, the Noted podcasts, like Michael and Pierre were big for me. But basically, once I was able to gain enough technical knowledge about Bitcoin and about Ethereum, it was just really obvious that Ethereum made this sort of like a dumb. You can't do. You basically have reinvented this centralization problem. You're trying to coordinate everything, bubble it up to like this centralized coordinating mechanism, which is the blockchain. Even if the blockchain is distributed over a bunch of computers, if every time someone clicks the heart button on Twitter to create a like, if that always has to coalesce into one blockchain, that's just not going to work. And that's how they design their system. So once I kind of really understood that, and I think that also kind of maybe played into, I don't remember which came first, but this understanding of which Bitcoin was Bitcoin. It's like, oh, the one that's not making like this dumb trade-off decision to try to get all state in the world. Every, McDonald's purchase is probably not going to end up living on the true Bitcoin blockchain. We're going to have to figure out other systems, because the more important thing is the distributed, decentralized nature.
Yeah. No, it's funny you bring that up, because just before you walked in here, I saw a tweet. Officially now 50% of Ethereum validating nodes are on the OFAC compliant list.
Oh, good. I mean, they got what they were working on.
Yeah.
They designed a system and they built it. Hey, good for them.
Congrats. Hey, shout out to the devs over there.
They're shipping code.
Hey, you can build.
Good job.
All the builders are over there.
Biddling.
That's why, but before we get to why you're here, because there is a specific topic I want to sit down and talk about with Paul. I'm sitting down with Paul Miller, founder of the Vergecast, now working at Voltage and doing many other things.
A lot of other things.
Yeah.
I've actually kind of got some news.
Oh, good.
So I've been doing front end at Voltage, and Voltage is now doing some research stuff and wants to fund some open source stuff. So Voltage is going to be funding me and Tony to work on Mutiny.
Oh, hell yeah.
We're going to be working on some other stuff there too, but we're going to be working at Mutiny, and we're going to build a privacy-focused wallet for everybody.
All right, let's start with Mutiny. So it's a privacy-focused wallet, Lightning only, correct?
Yeah.
And right now, you can only send.
Yeah. And yeah, I've got it on my phone. I don't know if it helps at all.
Yeah, Logan, look it up. Do you guys have a website?
Yeah, it's mutinywallet.com.
We'll put it up on the screen. But no, this is a very important project. Obviously, Tony Spaghetti has been very...
Tony Giorgio.
Tony Spaghetti.
I feel like you're disrespecting his culture.
Tony Giorgio. All right. Tony Spaghetti Giorgio. Yeah, so you guys came up with this idea. You've been working on what for like 3 to 6 months now?
Yeah, so we started at a hackathon, and kind of the biggest trick in Mutiny is that we spin up a new node for each channel open. It's built on Sensei in the background.
John Contrail's project.
Yeah, exactly. Which is built on LDK, Matt Corral's project. There's a lot under the hood, and so that idea. But basically, the framework that we're kind of going in with this is, what if we designed a wall? Tony has written this really great piece on Lightning privacy, and there's a lot of knowledge in there, and there are a lot of gotchas. In a lot of ways, Lightning is more private than on-chain, but there are a lot of ways that you can, leak details about yourself, or correlate a Lightning payment with an on-chain payment, and therefore you end up with the same privacy as on-chain. So you lose this advantage that Lightning could theoretically provide. And so the idea with the wallet is, how much of the know-how that we have of how to be private with Lightning can we encode into a user interface to just either not let a user do something that's not private, which is, in the joke right now is we don't receive. We don't have a good private way to receive. You can deposit funds, like you can send on-chain funds to fund a channel open, but then you only send out from it. And so obviously to ship a wallet, it will probably have receipt. But right now that kind of helped us get into this mindset of like, well, we're going to make the private choice but still make an easy to use, beautiful wallet. And so just trying to get the privacy stuff out of the user having to remember it all, and rather they chose a product from a lot. There's a lot of great options, obviously, in Lightning already, but they chose one that would on purpose guide them to the private thing.
No, I like that design approach. Start with the end goal of the best privacy that you can potentially attain on Lightning, and then just take your time getting there. Start with send only. Make sure that it's completely private from the base when you're sending it out, and then figure out how to add the receive privacy. So I guess that going into the gotchas of sending and receiving transactions privately over the Lightning network, receiving is obviously one of those gotchas in some way. Yeah,
because basically to receive, you have to say, hey, here's my node. It's this one, and my node pub key it just ends up obviously correlated with an on-chain transaction, and so it's just you're kind of doxing yourself in some sense when you receive, because you provide information about your node in the invoice so that they know how to route to
how to get there.
So we'll need ways to improve that.
What are the top ways that you're bullish on improving that? Are you a big fan of rendezvous routing?
I think, the hot new thing is, there's so much going on. I should mention I'm working on a Lightning, like kind of the future of Lightning privacy report with Tony and Ben and Evan, and we're kind of investigating a lot of these kind of newer technologies, like route blinding, trampoline, splicing. There's a lot of new, and then PTLCs will be a big deal. There's a lot of like future technology that can improve.
Can we depend on PTLCs though?
What's that?
Can we depend on PTLCs? Isn't the transition from HTLCs to PTLCs pretty arduous?
You're gonna have to open new channels, I think. I don't think there's going to be a nice friendly switch over. As far as I know, maybe there will be.
Yeah, and so for you freaks who are unaware, what we're saying here, it seems like we're speaking in hieroglyphics. Right now, when you open up a Lightning Network channel, use an HTLC, a hash time lock contract, a 202 multisig, which creates a two-way channel. Well, one way until they open up with you the other direction. And that's one way to do it. And what makes PTLCs possible? Schnorr, right?
Yeah, I think it has something to do with Schnorr, but it's a point time lock contract, so it has something to do with the elliptic curve.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like right now the privacy gain with PTLC over HTLC is like you basically have a hash of this, the hash time lock contract. You have this hash that's stable across every hop in the route. And so a bad actor on point A and further down the route could kind of correlate this payment and track payments across the Lightning Network better. Whereas point with PTLC, because it's like elliptic curve stuff, and you can, add and subtract things to, and just kind of those cool cryptography math things that I don't really know, but I kind of get a vague sense of how they work. That number, that ID, is going to look different across each step of the route. And so even if the bad actor is on 2 points in the route, they're not going to know for sure that these two payments correlate.
Yeah, with an HTLC, like if one part closer to the beginning of the route has one value that's lower, and towards the end of the route it's higher, they can sort of assume like this is probably like the same HTLC because it's building on it. Like,
you're talking about like the amount of the actual. It's like I'm assuming it's the same route plus a couple fees of all the hops.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that number, but I think there's also just the actual hash of that hash time lock contract.
Yeah.
And that's the stable identifier across these hops.
It's a lot.
There's a lot, and I want to be absolutely clear. Like I'm around these other. This is why I came to Austin, is to hang out with like kind of the Bitcoin developers, people who really know their stuff, and we're all learning at the same time. But some of us are way better at it than others. And I'm a front end developer, and I just try to keep up. I try to take notes. I try to ask questions to learn more. I'm like with these guys, like they're the ones that are figuring out like exactly, how to explain, trampoline and route blinding and stuff like that. I'm helping them make like pretty pictures to explain it better, So that kind of work is sort of my like niche right now in Austin, is being around really smart developers, and gives me opportunities. If I put a button on their really cool shit, well, now there's something that people can use, more effectively.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. Design is desperately needed in this space. Good design is lacking in the Bitcoin space. It's getting better.
It's getting better.
Historically, it's been severely lacking. And so that's cool. Announcement on the show. Shout out to Voltage for funding us.
Yeah. Thank you, Graham.
Yeah. And so you're building Mutiny on LDK, which is an interesting segue point to why I brought you on, which is what happened earlier this week. And I guess this ties into privacy and PTLCs to some degree, but there was an individual who made a 998 out of 999 multisig taproot address, I guess. It had nothing to do with the Lightning Network, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's Barack. He works on like liquid stuff.
Yeah, here we have the...
there we go.
I did 998 of 999 TapScript multisig, and it only costs $4.90 in transaction fees. And if you scroll down a little bit, Logan, you'll see our good friend Ben saying, LOL, this broke LND. So this was a big thing. Sunday night actually happened, Central Time. This went on. Barack made this transaction, and it basically shut down, or who knows whether it shut down LND, but it was hard to reach consensus between LND nodes, and it had nothing to do with the Lightning Network specifically or LND's implementation of it, but the fact that they were leveraging BTCD, right, which is a library. And and BTCD wasn't compatible with this type of TapScript multisig.
Right. So there's so many concepts here, and I want to help you unpack all of them. And it's been really fun, like investigating this myself, because it's almost like it's like a curriculum for learning about Bitcoin, learning about Bitcoin consensus, and learning how that relates to Lightning.
Dependencies, all that shit.
Yeah. So this transaction, just to be clear, it is, so when SegWit had a size limit for how big of a script, how big of a transaction you could put there, how big of a script your transaction could have, which is like 1,100 bytes or something like that, or 11,000 bytes, something like that. And Taproot, which is, so SegWit is like V0, Taproot is V1 of SegWit. So it's kind of an upgraded SegWit, and it has TapScript, but it's still, it's still like Bitcoin script basically. It doesn't have that size limit anymore. It's basically as big as a block is the size limit for your script. And so I don't know exactly why, but there's for some reason something they figured in Taproot, whatever they were worried about limiting the size before, they're not worried anymore. And so so LND has upgraded to support Taproot, and BTCD has been upgraded to support Taproot. And they ran all the test vectors of, that Bitcoin D has for like, here's everything that we think could happen on the network, everything that, a lot of tests of what valid transactions look like. They ran those same things on LND. It's all been fine. But nobody had published a transaction this large on the actual chain.
Or the testnet, right?
Or on testnet, because Brock actually ran this on testnet first, and that testnet LND is also broken by this. So when this hit the chain, LND, which uses, like you said, BTCD, which is an alternative Bitcoin implementation, like an alternative to Bitcoin Core, but also has a lot of Bitcoin-oriented logic that LND uses, even if your LND node is pointed at Bitcoin D as its like block source, it might still be using some BTCD logic. And part of that logic is how it parses transactions. So LND's consensus code and BTCD's consensus code was correct for this upgrade where tap scripts can be huge, but the parsing wasn't. So the parsing in BTCD was rejecting this transaction as invalid, even though it is a valid transaction according to the actual, Bitcoin consensus rules. So you could the way you could kind of see it as is that in some sense, BTCD was viewing a Taproot transaction as like hard fork. Like BTCD kind of hard forked because it didn't anticipate this kind of transaction that was actually, valid according to the soft fork, because they basically had too strong of a rule for how they parse these transactions.
Was it something as simple as eliminating a config file? Is that what it was? Or
yeah, it was just like a hard-coded size limit, because basically if you imagine the size limit was correct in SegWit, that you only have this max size of transaction, but they didn't up that size limit to be able to handle these TapScript transactions that can be larger now.
Seems like a pretty egregious oversight.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a liability of having a separate Bitcoin implementation, which kind of sucks, because I would love it. I would love to live in a world where we had a bunch, like Bitcoin consensus rules were so small and so
modular, and
yeah, you could just print them out on a piece of paper in like 72-point font, and like this is Bitcoin. As long as you agree by these rules, you're doing Bitcoin. But in fact, there's a lot of, this is sort of implicit consensus. Like, it's not the rules engine that's checking if something's valid, but if you're rejecting a transaction as it comes in over the wire, that is, implicitly consensus. So that's why, as much as we want to narrow Bitcoin D down to just consensus, the peer-to-peer layer really matters in Bitcoin D, and how it. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, it sucks, and so basically what happened is LND would mark itself as it's not synced to the latest tip of the chain, or like sync would be false, something like that. Also, if you restarted LND, it would not come back to operational, because it wouldn't be able to get to the chain tip. But LND nodes were, so this broke LND basically. Core Lightning wasn't affected, as LDK, none of the other implementations were affected. It's just LND. But these nodes were broken in the sense that they didn't have the security properties of Lightning anymore, where you're checking on chain to make sure your channel partner is not like messing with you. but you could still like send and receive and route. You shouldn't, but you could like, so, I fired up, Zeus, talking to my L&D node, running on voltage, still on 15.1, because all versions of L&D were broken by this. And I could send funds just fine. But it was the node itself was actually in a bad state.
Yeah. No, I don't think the gravity of this, but is it a bug? What would you consider it?
Yeah, it's a bug.
The gravity of this bug should be discounted because, like you said, you're running your voltage L&D node on 15.1 and it borked everything before 15.2. So essentially, if you want to be compatible with L&D today, you have to upgrade to 15.2.
Yeah, and that's a big burden. So like the timeline was basically this bug was noticed around like 4 p.m. or something like that, Texas time. Sunday. And on like voltage, we had like alerts go off or whatever that these nodes aren't syncing to the chain for some reason. And then there was a patch out around like 9 or 10, and we were able to push that to our nodes, and L&D was like, that built that patch because they have to kind of ship all these binaries, all the compiled versions of L&D. So we were able to get that to our customers pretty quickly, and then there's a button to upgrade. So in some sense, like voltage is like this line of defense of this difficulty of running your node. But, we've had, challenges upgrading from 15.0 to 15.1, for instance. So let's say you are a company that is still on a slightly older version because you're having some struggles, upgrading. Like now you have to go into high gear and upgrade. You never want to have to do a major breaking upgrade in a hurry like that
On a Sunday night.
What
are some of the struggles of upgrading?
Oh, there's just little bugs, little incompatibilities. There's just, they're major versions for a reason. Like there's, just stuff changes and you need to make sure everything still works. Also, you have to,
like the tools,
your node's got to go down for a little bit to upgrade.
Yeah. So you're saying you got to make sure everything works. Like the tools that you guys have built to interact with your nodes are running as expected. Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what it was with 15.1 that provided some challenge for us, but one of the things that we're doing with, like the API, you have to make sure that any APIs that you're calling still work, and whichever flavor, like whichever backend you've chosen to run L&D on, that still needs to work, database wise, you just. I'm trying to remember what we also do a lot of stuff with the like L&D nodes can be encrypted at rest, which we take advantage of at voltage, so that when the node is shut down, it's encrypted, and then you need a password to unlock the node, that kind of stuff. I don't know if that exactly was, but there's just a lot of details to however somebody's deployed L&D, and so it's not. The nice thing about this bug, and it's kind of a property of the Lightning Network, is that we have, as far as I understand, as far as how you would exploit this to harm somebody to actually steal funds, is going to be some sort of unilateral force close, where you would you see that this L&D node, or you assume that this L&D node is susceptible to this bug, hasn't been updated. So they're in a bad state where they don't really understand what's going on in the chain. And so you publish this old transaction, this old version of the channel state where you have more of the funds on your side than you actually should. And so you do like a unilateral force close. And the whole property of Lightning is that if a force close transaction like that is published to the blockchain, you have like 2 weeks to do a justice transaction. And you actually get to sweep all the funds. It's you have to punish someone for trying to cheat you with a wrong force close. And so those don't unilateral force closes don't happen very often in Lightning for whatever reason. It's not that antagonistic of a network right now. But so I can imagine there are something like that could be done to someone whose LND node is in a bad state. So that basically gives people running LND kind of a 2-week timeline to update to 15.2, the new version that patches this problem. And now they will be able to sync to the chain. And if anything bad has happened, if anybody's been trying to screw them, they're going to be able to detect that, publish the justice transaction. So in that sense, it's like we have this 2-week, we don't want to depend on this, but there's like this 2-week buffer for really bad things happening to Lightning.
Yeah. In that unilateral force close transaction, it's not hard coded at 2 weeks either. You can go in there and set different parameters, correct? Like if you wanted it to be like a month or whatever. Yeah.
It's obviously, it's defaults to 2 weeks, but you're right.
Yeah, I think Peter Todd was tweeting about that Sunday night or Monday. He was like, I hope more people increase the limit of their unilateral force closes because, again, like what is the current, like, do we have any insight into what percentage of nodes are running 15.2?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah. We're updated. I was on it right away.
I know the Umbral update is out. I saw that. So I think multiple of the Raspberry Pi kind of node in a box type things.
Yeah, so if you're out there listening to this, you're running an LND node and you're completely unaware to this bug. Hopefully we're making you aware of it now. Be aware, freak, because this bug is out there. And no, again, it's you can argue this is like probably like the most adversarial. It's not even an attack, but
that's an
event to happen to the Lightning Network, particularly LND to date.
It's kind of funny that it was just a guy messing around. Hey, look at this cool thing I can do.
Then he's got Ben Carmen respond as I'm like, dude, you just broke LND.
Just broke LND. So I find that highly entertaining. There is also an aspect of me that wishes that we, the ideal way for this to be discovered is somebody would break it on testnet, break LND on testnet by just testing weird shit, and then they would file this like as a critical vulnerability, get it fixed, and then like we'd like LND would like explain to everybody like 3 months later, like, hey, here's what happened. That's the best case scenario when you find a really horrible bug is that you hear about it and are able to update before the bad people know about it. Obviously, everybody found out at once with this because it was an accident. But I think it kind of shows just there's a little bit of, we're definitely past like the hashtag reckless phase, but Lightning could still use some maturing. And I mean, obviously, serious bugs happen in projects of all kinds and quality. But yeah, this seems like something that it would have been cool if we had all found that somehow. and to be honest, it also kind of shows that we're still really early with playing with Taproot stuff. I mean, this isn't even like a Taproot multisig. It's not like Musig or anything. It's not signature aggregation. It's just the fact that it's just like it's a single leaf, as far as I understand, of a Taproot script, and it's just a ton. It's just a ton of signatures.
Yeah,
and Tony and Ben did a reproduction where they created a Bitcoin script that it like pushes 520 bytes onto the stack, then drops them, and then 520 bytes and drops them. It's like up drop. It's just a really funny looking script, and it also breaks LND. So I saw that Tony did that last night. He like published this transaction to a reg test network on his computer. Now Alice doesn't understand the blockchain anymore. So it means that like, we probably need to be, I don't know, need or should, like, obviously I'm not doing it myself, but hopefully we can kick the tires more of Taproot and, what is possible now with these, these changes that we have, but they're hard to make use of so far.
Yeah. It feels like this instance could either be a lucky one or an unlucky one, where you have this Barack making this transaction that borks LND, and it's either a moment of like, oh wow, like now we know where a lot of the pain points are, or it's for an attacker, oh wow, like here's an attack vector that we should explore more. And
yeah, here's a relatively untested area of the ecosystem, like maybe I should be attacking. But I think, white hats kind of should see this as a similar call to action. Like, here's a relatively untested portion of the ecosystem. Maybe I should be attacking to be able to, file vulnerabilities before the bad guys do find them.
yeah, Antoine, Gleb, if you're out there, they're my favorite white hats on the Lady Network. They're probably all over it. Antoine specifically.
Yeah, if you want to reproduce this, Tony actually posted it on. He's working on a thing for his TabComp workshop. It's called Ellensploit, and it's to run different attacks on the Lightning Network. And he has added now this LND breaker. As I think it's probably the first exploit he's actually got in there. But if you go on Stacker News, pull up Ellensploit, you can break your own like local reg test network if you'd like. I mean the LND network, LND is already broken by this single transaction on mainnet, so you can't like re-break it or extra break it or anything like that. But if you start up a new reg test network, you can experiment and experience breaking LND yourself.
So I'm gonna ask, like, why weren't other implementations affected? And I assume it's because they don't have this BTCD dependency.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But do you foresee any taproot like unknowns affecting things like Core Lightning, Eclair, LDK?
I mean, if I knew those things, I think I would be working on them or telling somebody about them. No, I'm not. I would love to be able to anticipate those kind of unknowns. But I mean, there are just, I mean, the whole Multisig, eventually, Lightning will want to upgrade to these native Taproot Multisig that will just look like, like
a single sig.
Yeah, in the happy path, they'll just look like a single sig on chain, and that will be great.
Helps for privacy.
Yeah, it'll be super helpful for privacy. It'll basically create an awesome anon-set for Lightning channel opens. So that's just going to be a huge shift for Lightning. And so there's just going to be a lot of work to do. And there are also, I mean, the cool thing about it's like the same reason that it's kind of dangerous to have more than one Bitcoin implementation, as sad and kind of boring as that is. There's kind of this really great strength to having multiple Lightning implementations. I mean, I know, for instance, that the LDK has discovered a lot of problems with Lightning, just by virtue of being another implementation, writing their own tests, getting things working. There's been, random interoperability problems between the Lightning node implementations. And while on the Bitcoin layer, that's like, oh, interoperability problems, we're talking hard forks. Like, that's awful. On the Lightning, it means, a chance to better refine our definition of this kind of looser consensus, because it doesn't really matter if that guy over there runs whatever, he made his own Lightning node implementation out of duct tape. If you and I, our channel works and we can, pass these HTLCs back and forth and sign things and update. If it's working between us, Lightning's working. And if it works with you and me and Alice and then Bob, and we can route through the four of us, Lightning's working. It doesn't matter if someone somewhere else on the Lightning Network is running something weird and it breaks. So that's a kind of an awesome strength of the Lightning Network, is that in one sense consensus doesn't matter.
Yeah, you create this. I mean, you don't want to say bifurcated, but insulated zones within the topology of the network where people running different implementations can still communicate with each other, and even with other implementations, the interoperability is there. But no, it's a fascinating case study we've stumbled into this week. It's pretty big. I'm like about to sit down for Sunday night dinner, and I just see Ben laughing like he just broke LND. I was like, what the fuck? But going back, luckily this happened in the bear market too. Like again, we're probably lucky. Number one, that it was found, discovered, patched. Number two, the timing of it all. Like, can you imagine raging bull market? Everybody's like, Lightning is the future of payments, and then you have this. The most popular implementation just doesn't work correctly.
Well, I think that's why it's just so important that we break our own shit ourselves, because I think it's embarrassing if other people find our problems for us. So we should be actively trying to break Lightning as much as possible to make sure, because I do have this vision of it as, it's an alternative to Visa. It's the UI UX of Lightning, I think, is already superior to credit cards in most cases, other than I really like Boop to pay. The fact you don't even have to unlock your phone as much. I don't know. I really like the tap to pay credit card experience, but buying some shoes online, it's just ridiculous. And then buying a digital product online where they shouldn't even need your shipping address, and the fact that you're putting in your phone number and your email, all this stuff for a credit card form, is just stupid. So Lightning has some awesome advantages just in UI wise, and then it has this final settlement aspect to it that's beautiful from a financial point of view, and it has unlimited scalability due to this, this peer-to-peer nature where, it does not, there's no limit to how much, because it's not centrally coordinated, there's no limit to how big it can scale, how many transactions it could handle. So it's really great, but it needs to, I think some of the biggest problems right now is Tor.
Is Tor fucked?
I'm over Tor.
Seems just,
and then it's dumb to say that because I have here's a better thing than Tor. But if you're talking about payment reliability, and that's going to be really important for a mass adoption, you can't have this unreliable. If you can't have core parts of the routing happening over Tor, so we need to. So either we're going to sacrifice on privacy by making clear net connections between important nodes, which also could be pretty centralizing, or we find other ways that are hopefully still private, but hopefully lower latency and more resilient, and have more uptime than Tor does, to be the backbone of this network.
Yeah, because it's been 6 months since Tor started getting DDoSed. It's been getting DDoSed for years, but it seems like this particular distributed denial of service attack is extremely successful.
Tor has Tor's problem is that it is in some sense centralized. It's hard to make a good communications network without that centralization. But if you think about it, Lightning is in some sense a better model for how you would want to make some sort of network of things that achieve a useful end, right? There's no directory that you go in the Lightning network to look up things about nodes, right? Because that's what gets DDoS in Tor, is these special nodes in Tor that can tell you how to get other places in the network. I2P, I really would love. Please reach out to me. I think we need. I don't want to suggest that we need a task force in the sense of we need some people to sit around and have meetings about this problem but not achieve something. But we need to find a group of crack engineers in the Bitcoin ecosystem to look into how we solve this. But I2P is really interesting. Obviously, Bitcoin D already has it.
Bitcoin Core implemented too.
Right. Sorry, yeah. Bitcoin Core has.
Oh yeah, Bitcoin D is Bitcoin.
I'm just talking about the the executable. So I2P already exists, and I2P has much more of a P2P kind of mindset. But like, P2P for actual internet things is just, it's tough. I don't think I2P necessarily is the full solve, but it'd be cool if it is. But whatever we do, we just need to find better ways. I mean, maybe we run it all over Nostr. I don't know.
Are you a Nostr bull?
Yeah, I am. I really like it.
I do too.
I think it's really beautiful how simple it is. And that simplicity has attracted a lot of developers, and the complexity that is necessary to achieve the applications you'd actually want to do are only need to be adopted by the application who actually needs that feature. So I think it's really smart, and I think it's really beautiful. I haven't had a lot of time to work on it. I started like some Nostr Rust thing, and just kind of abandoned it. But I used dummies.
I used dummies before as well.
Yeah. So and Enigma. Yeah, I think that's that's basically a hub and spoke model where you have these very dumb relays, right?
Via WebSockets, correct?
Yeah, that's all via WebSockets. So I mean that doesn't solve the Lightning communication problem per se, other than the fact that the idea of maybe you have these routing nodes, or I mean if you think of the hub and spoke model of how it ends up working for money to flow around, you eventually kind of almost need something very similar at like the network layer. You need like a mirror image somehow of Lightning, the monetary network, at a network layer to keep things communicating. And I don't know. I've been trying to think. I'm trying to think in kind of high level thoughts of what this ultimately looks like. Because ultimately, for two machines to communicate, like in the IP protocol, I need to know your IP address to communicate with your machine. And then unless you do some sort of proxy, so like, actually, one interesting alternative to the Tor thing is what Lightning Labs is doing with Lightning Node Connect, and that's basically like a proxy mailbox. So it's hard to get my Raspberry Pi and my phone to have a stable connection between each other, but they can both find this proxy up in the cloud.
Very reliable proxy.
Right. And potentially, I think, lower latency than Tor probably. So they can both connect to that and send, basically the same traffic that they would have sent over Tor, but now they just do it through that proxy. And it's relatively private. It's not the most private, but it's a pretty good solution. So I don't know. That's one way. That's potentially how, and it doesn't have to be run by Lightning Labs. Like as they roll this out, I think there'll be multiple providers providing these proxies, so you can choose who you want to trust to be your middleman. I don't know. There's a lot of potential solutions.
Yeah. And back to Nostr, the big knock. I mean, it's not even a knock yet because it hasn't happened, but people worry that at scale, or if it gets too popular, it'll be susceptible to Sybil attacks, correct?
I always forget which one Sybil attack is.
We just have like a bunch of, it's not the same as a DDoS, but like it's pretending to be somebody, I believe. Isn't that what Sybil is?
Like
spam.
Spammy accounts.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about Nostr is I choose which pub keys I'm looking for. Like I want to subscribe to the events published by this set of pub keys, and I tell they're not called routers, whatever they're called. I forget what they're called in Nostr, but I tell relay
node, yeah,
which pub keys I want to be and I probably tell like 5 different relays. Like I'm looking for messages from these pub keys. Now, if a ton of people are subscribing to relays, or a ton of people are publishing to relays, these relays are gonna like buckle. under that volume of traffic. And they're going to need to somehow be incentivized to whose messages they receive, whose messages they store, and who do they forward their messages to. So somewhere along that chain, I believe someone will be needing to pay the relay for their service.
In sats.
I believe in sats. Can you think of a better money?
No, I can't. I find safety in sats.
Me too.
Yeah.
Big fan.
It's so fascinating that we're working on all this. What's a few? I mean, you started listening to the show in 2018. Now you're full time working on Bitcoin at Voltage and Mutiny and other projects. You created the testnet version of the first Fedimint with Fluttermint, right?
They did a mainnet transaction.
Yeah, they did one, but you created the iOS app, didn't you?
Yeah. iOS, Android, the Flutter. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it's. I mean, a lot of it's credit to the podcast you and Parker did about the kind of this call to arms of like, let's retreat from the cities,
Come to another city
and move to another the liberal bastion of Texas. But let's, I was suffering in New York. And
as we all were at one point.
And so, what if I prioritize getting a job in Bitcoin, which I did at Voltage, and prioritize getting to Austin, where the Bitcoin developers are, and see what I could build. And so I did that. And it's just been absolutely wonderful. It's just been so cool to be, I was in the Commons just working on whatever I was working on, and it comes to the end of the day, and I'm like, "Hey, Justin, what are you working on?" It's like, "Oh, I made this like real simple UI so you could, so you can do Fedimint stuff from an app."
Very simple, but very ugly.
Yeah, it was simple and it was ugly, and so well, I could add a drop shadow to something here, and so I just started working with him on Fluttermint. And then they had a big sprint in kind of this past month to get it ready to demo. And then I see this tweet where Eric did like a mainnet transaction. For me, that is the biggest incentive. There's something so cool to me that the code I write like moves money. Like it's like it touches its hand, and it's scary because I could get it wrong. But usually I'm not doing like the really low level logic. Mostly I'm doing more of the user interface. So usually I can blame somebody else. But yeah, seeing that picture, like it almost made me tear up. Like here is this app I built that just purchased coffee, the most cliche thing in the world to buy with Lightning. But it's it's really important to me, and it's very empowering. There's no other like ecosystem. Like how many other developers outside of Bitcoin, their code moves money? I think that's pretty rare.
Yeah, unless you're working at like Stripe or
yeah, and there's so many regulatory barriers. It's like illegal. It's like against the law to write code that moves money most of the time. And then we have this better money with an open API basically that you can just write code that moves money. And so, yeah, that's kind of, for me, like that ends up being a big motivator. I want to get a lot better. I feel like I have a ton to learn. I helped with Carr and Sahil. We started the Austin Bitcoin Design Club. So I want to get more understanding of UX. I'm definitely like very passionate that we can get better at UX in Bitcoin, but do it in like kind of a Bitcoiny way.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's something I say on this show a lot. If you're a designer who wants to innovate and really leave your mark on the world, come to Bitcoin and design UIs and user experiences. Because when you think of the canvas that Bitcoin provides in terms of basically creating experiences where people interact with private public key pairs, where they're interacting with these HTLCs or eventually PTLCs on the Lightning Network, they're managing on-chain sats and Lightning Network sats, Fedimint sats, whatever it may be. Like it's almost incalculable, unfathomable. We can't even fathom the types of design interactions that are needed to be created. You have different address structures. You have legacy addresses. You have wrap SegWit. You have Bech32 native SegWit. Now you have Taproot. And how do you communicate that to users? How do you make sure they're comfortable with what they're doing? How do you integrate multisig and all the backups for the derivation pass and all that shit?
Well, we this is a real common. I mean, at Voltage, you know, someone knows about Bitcoin. They know about Lightning. They know that they need to run a Lightning node. They get all hyped up and they get a Voltage account and they create a Lightning node, and then like they learned so much and they understood so much about money and Bitcoin and Lightning, and they understood so much of the stack, but they didn't have enough to keep going to actually run a successful node and like open channels and stuff like that. So like that there's so much growth sometimes required by the user right now in our products. The hard thing is that I think from the Bitcoin perspective, you know, like one of the most famous books in UX design is called "Don't Make Me Think."
Yeah.
And how fiat of a phrase can you imagine? And I think, you know, I know this from like kind of a tech journalism background, is that we would judge products based on like basically like how well they held your hand, like how easy is this to use. But if you think about your life, like you know, what are the most valuable things in your life? You know, I'll guess for you, but your wife, your kids, health, like which of those is really easy, like to achieve? Like the most important things to us are the things that require a level of responsibility, dedication, like a grind and a faithfulness and like an ever deepening understanding and just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And that's what is the most important to us. So it's weird to imagine that the most important, best software in our lives would be so easy that you wouldn't even have to think, that you could just brain off and just like blindly feel around on this app and do the right thing. Like that is what, you know, Instagram does to like get you addicted to coming back every 45 minutes or whatever the cadence that they've calculated is the most profitable without making you suspicious. Whatever they dial that experience in so that you know you need to come back in a certain amount of time. So many of our experiences, especially like media experiences, are really designed around kind of controlling us and addicting us. So from a Bitcoin perspective, you know, I think our interface is going to have to be so different with this. I always bring up Sparrow as my favorite example of a it's a very easy to use, beautiful app, but that is clearly educating you about what you're doing. And you see this, you know, transaction, you see these inputs and you see these outputs. It's kind of visualizing. Mempool.space, like you can imagine a version of Mempool.space just said like, is like a binary. It is one set per byte good or bad right now, you know? But instead it's this beautiful user interface that, and then they keep on evolving it. Like if you want to pull up that transaction again, that Barack did, so that
Click on the link.
Yeah, click through. It's in a different language, but if you scroll up or in the browser bar, if you get rid of that, everything, there's like a language. I think it's
TR. He's Turkish, right?
Yeah, something like that. If you just get rid of the TR and just have it /TX, it should be in English again. Okay, there we go. So yeah, this is the transaction. Like there's obviously a lot going on in Mempool.space, but it's beautiful. And in some sense, it's teaching you. So here is this flow of you know this input and output.
So yeah, this big input bar, which is the 998 signatures necessary.
And you can see the features that are turned on: SegWit, Taproot, replaced by fee. You can see the fee he paid He paid $4.81 to break Lightning.
The less than $5 Barack attack.
Yeah, and you can actually, if you click in details, I believe, on the right of inputs and outputs, you can see the script.
That box.
There you go. That is this the witness. Don't ask me too much about this stuff. I'm not great at on-chain stuff, but that is the witness that was larger than was ever possible with SegWit v0. This would have been rejected by a Bitcoin node if it was a SegWit v0 transaction, because it's a SegWit v1, a Taproot transaction, this is legitimate. This is allowed now.
Yeah.
Up to an entire block.
Please don't ever put that in a shout out and make me read it on there, freaks. But no, you just mentioned, like, that's another thing. Like, so you say SegWit version 0 and SegWit version 1, you're talking about like Bec32, and people don't realize you can have there are 16 different versions that you could have within Bec32, right? So like now we have Taproot, which is version 1. Version 2 could be Taproot something else.
Yeah, Taproot squared.
Yeah.
Hyper tap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing that SegWit got us. Because SegWit is a pretty hacky addition.
Is it SegWit or Bec32 that got us this?
I don't know enough to
the address
speak
structure
to that.
Yeah.
But somehow in SegWit we got this versioning scheme, and now that we have this versioning scheme, we can iterate on that without having to do as big of a hacky change as SegWit was.
Yeah, but then this gets back to I mean early Bitcoin. Like, this is one of Mircea Popescu's big. He hated the concept of Bec32. There was a lot of early Bitcoiners who were like legacy address maximalists. Like the one in front of the address is people in early Bitcoin thought moving forward, like, you should only ever have legacy type addresses, and that's created a lot of controversy. But maybe what Barack did on Sunday is a validation of that. Like, hey, yeah, it's cool to have all these things, but do you increase the attack surface or the unknowns that allow for more instability within the network?
You do, and I really want the L2 ELTOO ideas. Basically there's some real strong improvements to Lightning that are potentially possible with some set of soft forks, and I think that would be great. But yeah, you're increasing the attack surface. I think very few things increase the attack surface. Actually, it's just really hard to say. It's hard to know for sure, and that's kind of the hard part about it. Is it's also hard to communicate some level of confidence, like, oh, this change to consensus, it feels really safe and like it doesn't have a lot of collateral damage, whereas this one doesn't. Like, getting a broad understanding of why that is. I feel like Taproot's improvements were strong enough that it was able to. How many people really understand how Taproot works? Probably a lot fewer than people who understand the obvious advantages of Taproot.
I fall into the latter bucket there.
Yeah, and pretty much myself as well. But other soft forks, like Jeremy Rubin's the one that comes to mind, that are slightly hard. That it's a slightly harder sell of what the actual advantage is. Have such a huge uphill, because you're basically asking someone, accept this hard to parse blob of potentially damaging things.
So Jeremy wants to introduce covenants via op check template verify, which would need to enable another opcode. You're sort of re-enabling an opcode and adding to it, correct? What he wants to do, I believe.
I think there's some like kind of reserve spots for opcodes. I think it just uses one of those. I'm not sure.
Because they moonlighted, not moonlighted, but they took out a bunch of opcodes that Satoshi had originally. People were like, hey, you're going to fucking bork the system. But yeah, no, it's controversial. So what Paul's describing here is Jeremy Rubin wants to use opt check template verify to bring covenants to Bitcoin, which would enable these complex transaction schemes where you can have like a bunch of if-and functions. If this happens and this happens, sent to this address, and you can like pay people and do it in a very automated fashion.
Yeah.
Which seems appealing, but again, I'm too dumb to know what it does to the attack surface.
Right. And it might really not be not that much.
Might be a nothing burger. Yeah.
I think I actually kind of like that soft fork personally, but it's, who am I to say that this is great, because I don't fully understand the system well enough to really be sure. But the problem is who truly fully understands the system well enough to be sure.
And how can you know that they know what they're talking about?
Yeah. How do you build trust? This is something I've been thinking a lot about since the Bitcoin Miami, and actually hearing the Fluttermint guys, OB and Eric. I think this was before Fetty was announced, but
Yeah, it was.
Hearing them talk about trust as how they're solving this custody problem really got me thinking of this kind of like trust is a scaling solution. And so in some sense, trusting certain Bitcoin core developers is a way of scaling like the
Decision-making process.
Yeah, because ultimately it matters what us node runners think about what they think, because that's ultimately how you're actually going to get, any sort of consensus change, any sort of soft fork through, is a wide acceptance among node runners and or miners, who I don't want to exactly specify what the soft fork process is, because it's still obviously a little vague. But but most of us are going to be less technical than feel comfortable like putting our stamp. We're going to put somebody else's stamp. So how do we learn who to trust? Like Bitcoiners say, don't trust, verify. But what if you're incapable of verifying? Just not trusting anybody ever is not actually how we go through life. So how do we get good at trust?
Yeah, trust is an essential part of humanity.
Yeah.
And yeah, people often conflate the very true underlying ethos of Bitcoin, which is like, don't trust, verify. Don't trust that Coinbase is sending you, or your wallet software is sending you the correct address, verify via your node. And that's particularly easy to verify running a CLI command or something like that. If I can do it, most people should be able to do it. But then, yeah, you get into these headier, more obscure ideas of making protocol changes where you have to trust that somebody understands the cryptography and the interaction between the addition of this new code with the pre-existing code, or how the consensus mechanism reacts if you pull something out. And that's something I'm just completely unqualified to discern for myself.
Mm. And it is scary that eventually Bitcoin ends up into some such complicated of a system that no human can really. It becomes kind of intractable. It's just the system, and we hope and pray that it stays up.
That doesn't seem very.
I know a really awesome version of Bitcoin that I could conceive of is something that could eventually abandon legacy stuff, so that it could try to keep it. Like everybody says, ECDSA was a hacky workaround
because Schnorr was patented.
Schnorr was patented. So wouldn't it be nice now that we have Schnorr, we could somehow simplify, and we're just going to have SegWit, and we're just going to have Schnorr, and then everything else should still work, but can't create new ones of those. That's, but we don't have that option in Bitcoin. But that would be kind of a beautiful world if somehow we could at least shed legacy as we add new things, and that somehow we're narrowing towards a simpler system over time.
Yes. I mean, I've always been pro get to as much ossification as possible. I would like to see it in cruise control, and you're only doing like maintenance and stuff that's absolutely necessary. That's very obvious. because again, I like the idea of creating this consensus mechanism that everybody can agree on, and then you just build with via, because now I'm like in my own head, because I saw Peter Wolla tweet out the other day, like, I don't like the concept of layers, like Lightning Network isn't a layer, it's like Bitcoin. And then he builds software on top of that, but I'll just use a layer topology.
Or
like
on top of it?
Yeah. Well, it's not really on top, so it's like it's within the network with a 2 of 2
Right.
multisig, and then I guess you're building something on top of that, because there is another node topology with it. We'll just use layers, but the idea of main chain, consensus engine, and protocol just being solidified, and then you just build an anchor into that has always resonated with me. With that being said, like, we do know, and this is something most people don't like to talk about, even like the hardcore devs, like, we do know that we need at least one hard fork in Bitcoin. So we have to figure out how to plan for that.
It's like the timestamp thing.
Yeah, the Unix timestamp. It's called the I think it's the 2032 bug, but it won't affect Bitcoin until 2106. Last estimate with block production times, because the way Unix works, it sort of has a Y2K like function where it just zeroes out, and that would fuck up consensus. So we need to hard fork to fix that at some point in the next 80 years.
Right, and that's really interesting, and I definitely don't have a good opinion on what's the best move here, but do you make that the smallest possible, most surgical hard fork of all time that only touches that one thing?
Or do you get
Or
it
do you
all
use
at
it
once?
as like, here's our chance, here's our one chance.
We get L2, we get CISA,
do this
we get all
crazy
this stuff.
cleanup. Well, see, that would be even adding features. I don't think you have to do that right then. But it's something that could be added via soft fork, probably should be added via soft fork. But like the idea of like cleaning up like legacy hacks that, in the hard fork. Like if you're going to actually break compatibility with Man in the Coma, we've been really in this very serious informal contract with Man in the Coma.
Yes. We always look out for our Man in the Coma.
I personally take it very seriously. But if we have to break Man in the Coma's node, that seems like the chance to potentially remove some legacy crap.
Well, this is something I haven't
but
heard.
I don't know if that's the right engineering decision.
Well, I haven't heard from this in a while. So there is a way to think of the Man in the Coma while doing this, and Stop and Decrypt is actually me and him. Actually, I asked the question at Baltic Honey Badger 2018. It was like Adam Back, I think Peter Todd, Giacomo were on stage, and I was in the crowd, and I asked the question, like, what are we going to do about this 2032 bug? And they like brushed it off, like Stop and Decrypt and I talked after that. And he makes a really good point, is like, you don't have to hard fork right away, but like in some version, whether it be version 22.0 or something, you should have the hard fork in the code. So somebody goes into a coma after version 22.0 or whatever, and the hard fork happens when they're in the coma, their node will hard fork. But can you coordinate that 80 years in advance? I don't know.
And that would be a good argument for keeping it small then.
Yeah.
But I like that. Bacon. Yeah. Let's front run those comas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but these are like unpopular subjects that people don't like. People just like to think of Bitcoin as this perfect thing. It works. It's going to take over the world. Hyper Bitcoinization is coming, but it is a distributed software project at the end of the day. It comes with a lot of kinks.
It's got a lot of little hacky things. It's written in C++. That's
it's hard to work with.
I was theorizing with Ben on this, like, this whole BTC debug. It's like, if you imagine if C++ is compiled down to machine code that is ultimately what runs on your computer. And like, we know that the BIPs aren't really Bitcoin, right? They're trying to describe the protocol, but that's not probably precise enough. Probably what's Bitcoin is the C++ code, but what's actually run is the machine code on your CPU. But there's different compilers that can compile C++, and also they compile differently based on architecture. So Raspberry Pi is ARM. So that's one architecture. So very different machine code than like your desktop computer might be x86. And so that's a whole different compile path.
And M1.
That's ARM as well.
Oh,
but it's a very different ARM. you know? And so you can imagine some compile bug that causes a hard fork, right? Well, which Bitcoin is real Bitcoin?
The one I'm using.
You hope so. You really hope so. But I think that's just a kind of an interesting way to think, and that's kind of something that I appreciate about this L&D bug, is that it's kind of helping me just because it you know, understanding consensus and then how consensus interfaces with this layer 2 or whatever term Peter Wolla recommends. I'm happy to adopt, but yeah, how this whole very complicated system all interacts is very interesting. Not solved.
No.
Not. I mean, you know, and Jeremy Rubin went through this with trying to propose a soft fork. You know, that's not a solved process. And to be honest, there's an aspect of it that having perfect knowledge and total understanding of how the system works would potentially be, it's sort of step one of having some sort of attack vector of controlling the system. If you knew for a certainty how to get a soft fork into Bitcoin, then
socially attack it.
Yeah, then if you're a bad guy, that's where you bake in your attack. Is your slam dunk soft fork that you just invented.
Yeah, this is why there's something beautiful about rough consensus, right? Like that. I mean, that's been really driven to the fore post Taproot conversations around CTV, trying to get that in. It's like, how do you actually do these consensus changes or these soft forks? Not always a consensus change, but yeah, you had things like speedy trial. People really didn't like that. Then you have the BIP 91, which is going on during the fork wars. And it seems like, from my observation, there's going to be like a different activation method each time because people are just always going to fight over one not being optimal.
And people, I don't want to just call them complainers because that's reductive, but the highly critical and vocal people will find reasons to be highly critical and vocal about everyone because each method, no method is actually going to be correct or perfect. So I think that's not an excuse to just do anything. But I think this kind of makes me think of, and I'd be really curious on your take on this. Have you noticed this trend in the past, maybe I would say 3 months, to be like really, really critical of Lightning?
I mean, it hasn't. I've been noticing it for quite a while.
So where do you think this? Where do you think it comes from? Because I want to be like, I have this like initial skepticism of Lightning. Obviously I work at a Lightning company, but Bitcoin is kind of a bit of like a miracle. It's like a once in 1,000 years kind of invention, right? And so the idea that you'd have another something on the order of quality right away.
It's 8 years later.
Yeah. It's a little, you know, it's shocking. It seems improbable, and that's not a great heuristic of why Lightning won't work. But it's just, you know, something that sticks to the back of my head of like, hey, there's no guarantee here that Lightning is the exact right answer for how to scale Bitcoin.
No,
but
certainly not guaranteed. But again,
see a lot of hate. A lot of people kind of dunking on Lightning, and I'm wondering, like, what do you think is motivating that right this second, or is there nothing new here?
So yeah, one thing to comment, and then a question for you. Comment is comparing Lightning's innovation on par with what Satoshi brought with Bitcoin. I'd say like it is probably an order of magnitude or two below the distributed node topology with a proof of work consensus mechanism with a built-in difficulty adjustment. I mean, Lightning's very cool, but sort of just building and anchoring into that. And everybody's very wide open with the trade-offs. Like, hey, you're eking closer to the center of the centralization spectrum. There are trade-offs with Lightning. You can run it in a decentralized way, but it's harder, and people are comfortable with those trade-offs. So I would say like it's not. I don't think Lightning is like on par with what Bitcoin brought to the world, but it is certainly incredible. And then too, like what particular things are people saying that are sticking out to you?
I don't dwell on them, so I don't really.
I mean, there is one thing. I mean, I just know I've been using Lightning. We've been running our node, and our node's been set and forget it. When we first set up our TFTC node, I funded it with a bunch of Bitcoin, and DJ manages our channels, and it's just been running, and it works. And people are streaming us sats right now. People are buying newsletters, shout outs, whatever. It just works for me every day. I use Lightning every day. Maybe not sending every day, but certainly receiving every day, and it works. But yeah, as somebody who's built monetization, a business monetization avenue via the Lightning Network, that does linger in the back of my mind. Like, there's some point in the future where, yes, Lightning works now and it's really good. But is that a product of its relative scale? If it scales up, does that success continue? Will it collapse in and out?
If it scales up, will it become antagonistic? And you know, are we in some sort of honeymoon phase where we're not actually dealing with true like attacks on the Lightning Network?
Yeah, imagine if it becomes Tor.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is you can't have like a just some. You
can't have rose-colored glasses about it.
Yeah, and you can't have a just sometimes networks payment network. Like I went to a gas station the other day, and their card was down, so they just locked the door. Their card reader was down, so they just like locked the door.
No gas today.
Yeah, you could. No gas today. No snacks today. You know, our machine's down. That obviously doesn't work as a payment system. So I think there is a potential. I have this very optimistic spin for the centralization, and I don't know if it's going to come true at all, but I like really, really would hope, is I can imagine node running becoming kind of like a game. And if it became possible to be a profitable node runner with a small amount of capital, like let's say on the scale of $100 to $1,000. So something that like you get it, you parlay your lawn mowing funds as a teen into this hot new node running game, and you find inefficiencies in the network and you just exploit the hell out of them. And like I can imagine these kind of like almost like toggle channels that are they're just designed for very high frequency back and forth routing, so that it's not like a channel that just slowly drains in this one direction and you get fees over time, and then you have to rebalance it with an on-chain. Like in this future of node running as a game, you've got to stay. It's very, very lightweight as far as how often you go on-chain, because on-chain is going to be relatively expensive compared to the kind of money you're earning. But if you can find a way to run this toggle channel and you're just getting fees back and forth, and that somehow that system becomes inefficient, because you know hub and spoke is a scaling method, but ultimately hubs get bogged down. They can only handle so many spokes, so you're going to need more and more hubs. Hopefully, node implementations get more scalable and more resilient, and they can handle more spokes as well. But so anyways, that's my like absolutely most optimistic case for we have a bunch of teens running around just profiting like crazy every time we make a Lightning transaction, because it routes through their nodes, because their nodes are just so well positioned.
I could see, I mean, if the machine payable web becomes a thing, and that increases the amount of transactions to orders of magnitude above what we are imagining right now, I can see that definitely becoming a thing. But even if it doesn't, like I've always had this, like again, I'm a media company. We run our node, we balance our channels. Like I think when Bitcoin adoption hits a certain tipping point, it becomes, and we hit a moment where it's like, yeah, this is happening. This is like how we should build our payments avenues for our company. And this is like our bank now is Bitcoin. I think companies are just going to have dedicated Lightning node operators that are paid to make sure that they're have a node up and running and it's profitable. And so in that world, we have media companies running nodes, banks running nodes, payment companies running nodes, car washes running nodes, whatever. I think that provides sufficient decentralization as well.
Well, you can also imagine a world like that if most nodes are run by people who are relatively like full time. Like if you think of how the actual internet how the actual internet works, there's these like peering agreements, and a lot of them are run like there are the people who choose which fiber optic things plug into which switches, and how they kind of share network. And a lot of that, especially, you know, I don't know where things are at now, but I feel like I was looking into this a lot during like the whole net neutrality debate. And basically there's a lot of these informal agreements, you know, among the dudes running these networks. And obviously there's also business agreements between these networks. It's like, okay, I have a lot of outbound internet traffic. I'm kind of looking to balance that out on this pipe, or, you know, whatever it might be. That network works really well. I think the internet broadband, I think it's
working right now.
It's pretty dang good. So if you could imagine a layer 2, you could either imagine Lightning will work like this with kind of high touch relationships between channel partners, not just you know, spray and pray connecting channels with random anonymous nodes. But you could also imagine a simpler layer 2 of payment channels between people. Like maybe it doesn't even have to be the whole network. Like maybe, you know, a channel moving funds back and forth. You know, maybe you could imagine something simpler with a little less consensus, a little less try to solve everything of an ethos than Lightning has. You could imagine a layer 2 that would be simpler, designed for, you know, like two banks. You know, think of how, you know, banks like want to settle their checks at the end of the day or whatever, and like, oh, I have some of your money, you have some of me. If you just had one big fat payment channel and you just push stuff back and forth, and then if you run out, if it gets too far on one end, you maybe close and start a new one. So you can imagine just non-Lightning payment channels being an important aspect of a Bitcoin financial system. Like it doesn't have to have all the complication of Lightning.
No. Even though we're thinking very adversarial this episode, I'm very bullish on Lightning.
Me too.
Again, I use it every day. It brings me value.
I'm building a Lightning wallet right now. And I love using it. And I love the UX. And yeah, it's awesome. I really want to figure out subscribes. I think subscribe, because like I don't like streaming small amounts of money over time, but I also am a little tired of skipping to like 7.5 minutes into every TFTC episode.
You're gonna have to do that for this one.
So I want to be able to pay you the equivalent of like $5 or $10 a month, and then every time I get TFTC, RHR, there's no ad read. And so that's kind of the world I want to live in. And I've definitely supported other podcasts like on Patreon. I started a podcast for a little while on Patreon, and people subscribed and paid to me. I mean, you're obviously banking on the idea that people are going to subscribe to you and they forget they're subscribed to you. And that's a kind of part of the business model. But we don't have to do that in Bitcoin. We just need some sort of protocol where I click subscribe when I'm on TFTC's site, and that opens up my wallet and tells my wallet about this recurring thing that I want to do. You're not going to be pulling payments from my wallet. It's my wallet. But I want to encode into my wallet my desire to pay you on a recurring basis. And then my wallet will remind me, and it will say, hey, it's time to pay Marty, or he's going to start reading ads at you again. And then I'll click yes, and I'll feel good about myself.
I think that future is possible. Obviously, the biggest hurdle is the RSS feed. But I forget who I was talking to. I was talking to somebody in like the last month. Apparently, the Podcasting 2.0 team is working on a way to create a separate branch in RSS feed. So you can have the ad read MP3, and then you have a branch that's value for value Podcasting 2.0 compatible. That is the audio without the ad read.
Oh, that's exciting.
And you can, I could be wrong. I could have dreamt this, but
it's a good dream.
It is. But Yeah, so the concept would be you have one RSS feed, 2 audio files, one with ads, one without. And those who are subscribing or paying sats get the, I don't even think you would have to subscribe. You just have to be listening via Podcasting 2.0 app that has agreed to stream sats. You'd get the no ads version.
Yeah, well, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, I actually feel like my time listening to podcasts has definitely like gone down over the past year, especially maybe 2 years. No, pretty much a year that I've been in Austin, as I kind of feel like I'm getting more done, and I have less downtime. I have like less time that feels like it's not productive. That is like the good time to listen to a podcast. So yeah, it just makes me resent the ad reads a little bit more.
I'm sorry,
but
gotta feed my family.
I want them to eat. But
do you, Paul?
Yeah, that's why I'm proposing a subscription protocol for Lightning. So just someone should build that, and then we'll be good.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way though. I actually got jaded. I mean, I listened to so many podcasts between like 2011 and 2018. Actually, when I started this podcast, that's one thing. That's my alpha. Everybody's like, oh, like, do you like listen to everybody else's Bitcoin podcast and try to compete? Like that's like what I try not to do. Like, I try not to listen to, unless there's like one where it's like, all right, I should do research on this because I'm probably going to talk to this guy at some point in the future, or girl. But yeah, I don't really listen to any other podcasts in the Bitcoin space. When I listen to a podcast, it's usually like No Agenda. I'll still listen to Rogan, like some history podcasts, but it's just Tim Dillon, just to like get out of the Bitcoin space for a while. But yeah, no, I don't listen to podcasts at all. Like only when I'm in the car. Like,
can I ask you a question as somebody trying to, like, I tried to listen to I did actually listen to the Greg Foss. Greg Foss. Sorry, Greg. Greg Foss.
Mark Moss and Greg Foss.
Oh, there you go. That's
Mark Foss.
That's, yeah. Greg Foss episode. I'm just really bad at a lot of macro terminology. And ever since I've been into Bitcoin, like listening to you talk, listening to Preston Pish talk, like people who have experience in finance just have a set of probably like 25 nouns that it just lose me every time. So like, yeah. So could you explain in like 5 minutes what is going on in the larger world? Because I really feel like this is one of the biggest, it feels like there's a financial crisis happening or unfolding. And I feel like this is the first one that I'm not, it's like normally I rubberneck at the car crashes, and I'm not rubbernecking at this one because I just don't feel either like I comprehend what's going on, or like I want to spend the time to comprehend what's going on.
All right, 5 minutes. So what's going on right now? Let's compare it to, so what Greg and I talked about were sovereign credit default swap spreads, which are on the rise. So if you remember going back to 2008,
yeah,
credit default swaps, CDSs, were a big part of the 2008 financial crisis. They didn't drive the financial crisis, but that's what the people in the Big Short, the Michael Berrys of the world, they went out and they noticed that the mortgage-backed securities were likely to fail. So what they did was create these credit default swaps that allowed them to short those products.
So it's like a bet on somebody going bankrupt, kind of?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then you profit from it.
Got it.
So that was 2008 housing crisis. Michael Berry and crew created specific credit default swaps to bet against the housing market, essentially, and they profited greatly from that. Fast forward to today, and what Greg and I were focused on. Yes, we did talk about Credit Suisse's credit default swap spreads, which are on the rise as well. So that means people are betting that Credit Suisse is going to go under. But more importantly, what's really heavy right now is the fact that you have sovereign nation CDSs on the rise, the spreads on the rise, which is signaling to the market that there's a lot more people thinking that sovereign nations are going to not be able to pay back the debt they've accrued. They're not going to be able to basically service the debt that they've accrued. And so that's essentially, in a nutshell, in less than 5 minutes, what's going on right now. All these governments have issued a bunch of treasury bonds here, treasury bonds in the UK gilts, Bank of Japan, Japanese government bonds, Bank of Japan. And basically they've all overextended themselves. Bank of Japan owns something like 47% of its bond market, so it's completely propping it up. And so right now, as we're rolling into this energy crisis, this financial crisis, that's having ripple effects across the global economy, most particularly in Europe, where energy prices are going up, so businesses are shutting down, less revenue to service the economy, to service the debt, and as well at the same time you have the Fed raising rates, which is increasing the interest payments on that debt. So it's just basically what's happening right now is a global shit show and it's becoming more and more obvious that the governments are not going to be able to pay back their debt.
And this is my kind of follow up on that. The Fed is raising rates, right? And that seems very bad for other countries.
It's bad for us too.
But when we print money, that's bad for other countries.
In one way or another. Well,
so it's just like, like I've heard Jimmy Songs talk, right? Like when you buy a house, that bank prints $400,000 and that money is basically the devaluation of everybody else in the world's dollars.
Yes.
So printing money is bad.
Yes. It's all bad.
Now with this, the Fed raising interest rates, in some sense, disincentivizing this bank's printing money, that is also seeming to be potentially very harmful to to the most vulnerable economies. So I'm trying not to harm the most vulnerable economies. I'm in charge of the Fed. I mean, what do I do?
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So so this is one of the other popular tropes on Wall Street for anybody who's like a Fed hawk and really is against the invasive monetary policy, or what's the involved the Fed getting involved in monetary policy creates basically a rock and a hard place from which the Fed has to operate. And again, it goes back to the debt. So you have two ways you default on your debt. You either print your way out of it and just inflate away the money that you're paying back, and you can pay back your debt, but the money that you're paying it back in is not worth anything, or you overtly default, which is what the rising interest rate environment is creating. Lower interest rate, you debase the money to a certain point, you can pay back the debt, but the money's worth nothing. Rising interest rate, you increase the amount of money on your interest payments, you don't have enough of that money to pay, so you just default on your debts.
So both things would hurt your creditors.
Yes. In one way or another. The former way, inflating away, is the more politically palatable way because it's a slow bleed, death by 1,000 cuts. You wake up one day and you're Venezuela. But this one happens much quicker and is much more abrupt, where you have UK pensions basically begging the bank.
So you're arguing in favor of money printing is what I'm hearing.
If you're, it's probably the lesser of two evils. Actually, I'm actually a fan of rip the Band-Aid off, keep them high, let everybody default, then transition to a Bitcoin standard. So I don't think we should kick the can down the road anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, I don't know. The thing I had that really popped into my head in this last, this kind of downturn, which seemed to really coincide with, we've been worried about these food shortages and stuff since the pandemic started, and all these kind of energy problems and stuff like that, is that the printing really seems to lead to malinvestment. It's
yes,
printing is all about value destruction. And that seems, so I wanted to be let her rip and we get hyper Bitcoinization, at least in dollar terms. The Bitcoin becomes worth infinity dollars because the dollar's worth zero. And that sounds exciting. But in reality, I feel that there would just be so much value destruction during that time that I want to avoid that if possible.
Yeah. So the printing leads to value destruction, and the tightening leads to true price discovery, where it's you had all that printing, all that malinvestment. Now interest rates are higher. People are going to pay back more on their debt, and they're selling at things that aren't really valuable to service those debt obligations. So
Bitcoin, apparently.
we're really finding out like what people value or what actual price of things are.
It's just beautiful.
It is, but it's also scary because a lot of people, billions of people around the world, have built this worldview and this economic edifice on top of this facade.
Yeah.
Or it is the facade. The worldview is the facade on top of
The
fragile
facade
system.
was the foundation.
Yeah. It's all fucked. This is why we Bitcoin.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. It's why, I don't know, for me personally, my Bitcoin journey, I came into it being really attracted to the economic properties of it, the monetary system. But now, fast forward, it's almost been 10 years now, being able to sit here and talk to you about like BTCD and Taproot, like if you would have told 21-year-old Marty, like he would understand all this weird distributed computing stuff and consensus and difficulty adjustments. He'd be like, wow, you fucking nerd.
Well, yeah, I like this. I like it that it's reality. You know, like I like to just kind of dig into what is real. And here's a money that we can build ourselves and iterate upon ourselves and improve ourselves. And that it's kind of on us to understand and improve Bitcoin and build the tools on top of Bitcoin, which is probably, going to be you're not going to see me doing a lot of good work in Bitcoin Core probably. But, I think I can at least understand Bitcoin well enough to hopefully make it slightly more accessible to a user, the Lightning Wallet user who wants some privacy. That's kind of my medium-term goal right now. So I feel kind of pretty lucky to be in that position. But yeah, it's really, really real.
Yeah.
It's not a facade.
No, you can go check it for yourself. You can verify for yourself. It's fucking real. And it blows my mind that there's still talking heads out there. It's like, it's a Ponzi. It's like, all right, I actually take that as like awesome. Like, keep thinking that. I'm gonna keep building, keep plugging in miners, keep building this show out, investing in companies in the space. And like, testament to you, the Fluttermint UI, like the UX is flawless. Scan a QR code, scan another one, scan the send. It just like works.
It just works.
Onboarded in seconds, sending sats in less than a minute.
It's that trust advantage.
Yeah, right.
The shout out to Skylar who designed that. Like he built a Figma, and then I built the Flutter front end of the app based on that Figma, and then that plugged into this Rust, like the engine inside of the app that does all the communicating with actual Fediment, which is built by mostly Eric Sirion and a bunch of other contributors. So obviously there's a whole stack there, but yeah. I got to be a part of that first mainnet Fediment transaction. So that's
pretty sweet.
That really felt really special.
It's going to be historic.
I like literally, I don't even know why. I remember where I was like helping my brother who just moved into his house, like move boxes around in this basement. Like, and I was like trying to clear off the pool table so I could use the pool table in the basement. And I'm hearing you and Matt describe federated Chaumian mints, and they have this kind of crazy privacy implication, but they were invented, before even Bitcoin, but now we can build them on top of Bitcoin. I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. And then fast forward, a year-ish later, and I'm working on that. I always like something if you threw a dart at a LinkedIn profile of a random front end dev, easy chance finding somebody better than me.
Oh, stop that.
But I'm in the right place where the right people are building really cool stuff, and then I get to collaborate with them, and so I get the chance to like build things that I'm really proud of and I'm really excited about, that I wouldn't have been able to build by myself, and that I didn't have to be the best front-end developer on LinkedIn. I just had to be the front-end developer that happened to be around to work on this exciting project that one of my friends was taking on.
And look at you blazing trails.
That's right.
Something I wanted to talk with you specifically, because I know You're a devout Christian. Do you think Bitcoin is a divine intervention?
I am. Well, I think anything good on earth is a gift of God.
That's true.
We deserve destruction, and we basically live in a state of deferred wrath against evil. Like, there is so much evil in the world that has been committed, that is being committed, and will be committed. And God is holding back wrath on the whole world for the sake of his son, because Jesus' work and death on our behalf to save some of us from that coming destruction. But this destruction is promised. So anything nice that we get to enjoy, I think of it kind of as like a slice of heaven. It's just a little example of what a right, non-corrupted version of earth would be like. Is, well, of course you'd have, if I did some work for you, and I deferred no, Marty, you don't need to do work for me right this second. I'll defer my reward. That in heaven, I think that would be tracked somehow. And then later on, and we'd create value. I imagine we could create value in heaven by doing work for one another. And so I don't know exactly what ledger we'll be using. In heaven, you could trust everybody. So maybe we'll just use like Excel spreadsheet.
Like a handshake, a dap up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, however we want to pull it off. But so I think of it kind of like a slice of heaven in that sense. But yeah, I don't know if it's not necessarily like, it's like, I don't know if this empire deserves to be saved, and God decided like, hey, let's let this empire have a free pass by, working through Satoshi to make a better money that saves the USA despite all its failings. Like, I don't know if that's what you mean by divine intervention. I don't know. But as far as,
well, it doesn't have to be US centric. I mean, just like humanity. I mean, I think you and I would agree that the US government and the intelligence apparatus and the military industrial complex is probably evil and doesn't really make people better off at the end of the day. And Bitcoin has provided us a way to opt out and build. Yeah. But not only us, there's people living under other shitty governments around the world that have the same opportunity.
Yeah, peaceful revolution. And, that's something like, Jesus talks about, like he in he went to a synagogue and he read off some verse of, I don't know exactly, from Isaiah about, we're supposed to liberate the oppressed. We're supposed to feed the poor. We're supposed to do good and seek. We're supposed to love justice, seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with our God. This is our role on earth. Is calling from God to do justice, help the poor, help the oppressed. And Bitcoin is a method of monetary justice, and it helps, it helps me, but also helps people in very dire situations who need to flee across a border, or who have some crazy sanctions on them, or have been unbanked because where they park their truck or whatever. So I think it's highly moral activity, and it's in line with God's vision for what his people should be working on earth.
I would agree. Yeah. Bitcoin just seems like a manifestation, a modern day manifestation of like Jesus going into the temple and chasing out the money changers.
Yeah.
But then also implementing the correct money, the moral money.
Yeah. I mean, one thing along those lines, I'd actually maybe a phrase that's really stood out to me from the Bible recently is this idea of turn from your rage. There's like this whole chapter of Psalm 37. It's basically, you see the wicked, and they get all this stuff, and seems like the righteous don't get anything right now. But in fact, there is, I think, a temptation to be jealous or envious of of people who do wrong and get huge rewards for it. And like we see this obviously in the like, shitcoin ecosystem all the time.
I'm not envious, but I do get angry. I do get the
Right.
rage.
Right. And so I think anger, it says to like turn away from your rage. And I think anger typically makes us kind of impotent. And then the envy just makes us wicked ultimately in the long run. And so if we see like either of those things kind of like cropping up, it's like, to me, I just have started to see that as like, that's my sign when I get off Twitter, is if I get, and I might even, drop an unfollow in there too. Even some of the clown world stuff is obviously endlessly interesting and fascinating and frustrating. But if I see it seeping into the point where I'm getting kind of like a rage about it, but that has like an impotence to it, I feel like it's almost like it's designed to sideline me, especially some of the real culture war stuff that like that
I get dragged into.
The boomer cons versus the like whatever liberal flavor of the week is pissing off the boomer cons, like that really highly accessible outrage with very little practical application. I've just found that it really sidelines my ability to do good work. So I try to kind of run away from, but I highly recommend Psalm 37 because it's written by David, who was oppressed by an unjust king and who was trying to kill him. And he also, his son rebelled against him when later on David was the rightful king. So he had all sorts of injustice happen to him. And yet his advice is turn from your rage. And the big takeaway is that the wicked prosper right now, but and this is from another piece of Psalms, like Psalm 125, that there's no real like eternity to injustice. Like injustice is a temporary awful thing that we should fight against all the time, but there's no eternity to it.
They'll get theirs eventually.
They always get theirs, and it's certain. That's a solved problem. Whether or not the wicked are going to be punished for what they've done is solved by God. That is, don't worry about it. So I need to decide what I do right now, and that might involve resisting the wicked right now. But I don't have to be frustrated by the wicked right now.
Yeah, I need to take this psalm to heart. I get very frustrated.
Yeah,
Marty Jones is a character for a reason. Yeah, it's hard not to though. And I guess it is the weak part of my own personality. Is I succumb to it pretty easily, but I do try to channel it to like highlight, look at the wickedness.
Yeah,
turn this way. It's hard.
Yeah, you see the wicked. I mean, that's
so much wickedness out there.
Almost every psalm really has this. David was clearly dealing with a lot of wicked in his time. It has this pattern. It's like, I see the wicked and they get so rich, everything goes great, and they trample on the poor, and everything seems to go right. And there's like, but the psalm always kind of recognized, well, but God is good. God is in control. And then, a lot of times, explaining in detail how God will just fuck their shit up.
Yeah. No, it's hard to see it all go. I mean, again, like I'm a child of 9/11, child of the Iraq War, child of the great financial crisis, child of the great QE boom and the ongoing war in the Middle East and now Ukraine. And it's just like all these people.
I remember 2008. I think I'm just a little older than you, and just that idea of how hard it was to get a job, like that's kind of what the recession meant to me.
Yeah, is
jobs are really scarce. My brother got laid off, and so seeing the potential of that, I mean, and obviously that's so small compared to the financial problems that some people face. What we went through in 2008, but it's a very tangible fear to me of what even just another 2008 looks like. So I don't really even know what potentially.
The sovereign debt crisis. I mean, we don't want to end it on a doom note, but like the sovereign debt crisis, if it is blowing up, like that's the fucked up part about it. I mean, it does fuck us over, but it really fucks over like our parents and grandparents. We're like, I know many people in my life who are at the doorstep of retirement, have been saving their whole careers. And and Matt and I discussed this the other week, like what you're told is you're approaching retirement, you restructure your portfolio, go into
the lower risk.
Go into the lower risk, which is bonds. Bonds are getting completely wrecked. So I know many people who want to retire who have been told this is the way you do it. They did it that way. Now they're about to go out into retirement with a 40% haircut, what they thought they had, which is pretty fucked. And I don't think there's any way to solve. I mean, yes, you can begin inflating it away, but then you're in retirement and your money buys you less. So you're damned if you do, damned if you do.
I mean, this is why I like Texas Slim so much. I'm so glad you brought him to so many people, including myself's attention. I was at like a beef initiative thing here at the Commons, and someone said something about regulation. And it's like, here's a thing that the government's doing that makes it hard for us to have good food, and it's bad. And Texas kind of has this sidestep of that. And it's like, that's what they're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. I think that's really beautiful. So it's like, so I see, this, if there's some sort of impending financial doom, I want to think about what I can be doing specifically to, I can't protect retiring seniors and their pension funds. Like that's beyond me. But, I have parents, and what can I do to get them potentially closer to me? What can I do myself, like food security, things like that, job security? What does it take to be, in a good part, like in a resilient part of the industry? Yeah. Anyways, it just makes me want to like focus on what is within my grasp. What can I work on?
Yeah. What can you control? Stack sats. Buy a freezer chest. Buy beef to put in that.
I mean, and this is the lie of money too, and obviously the lie that was told to these these potential retirees is that you can secure your future, and like that is actually not within your grasp. You can do what is prudent to give yourself a better shot at a better future, but you can't really secure your future. You can't ever, with any certainty,
well, especially if you're beholden to
lock it down,
the whims of governments issuing treasury bonds and printing money, but pushing the stock markets. Like that does not go on forever. We're finding that out right now.
Right. So you have a system piling on risk to just the inherent risk that any human would face.
Well, and that's the scary part about it too, is there were many people who were able to do that, and they think they were able to secure their future, but they were just a product of living at a certain point in time where they got out at the right time.
I feel like I'm like a lucky, in that sense, product of my specific time, just to be rightly positioned to hear about Bitcoin when I did, to have the flexibility in my life to kind of change careers and become a developer, to be able to get a Bitcoin job, to live in a city where I have a bunch of great friends who are like Bitcoiners and Christians. So I do feel I'm like a product of this time, and it's going almost too good for me. I'm really grateful.
I am as well. No, I mean, same. I think,
but there's a lot of evil out there to fight.
There is, and we're gonna win though. God always wins at the end.
There's no eternity to injustice.
No. Maybe we'll end it on that. Should we end it on that?
I'd be happy to.
Peace and love, freaks. Take care.